So this short video, we're going to actually give you a couple of hints and tips on how best to apply waterborne products to a door such as this one. Now, obviously this is a small door, but you can relate it to a big one as well. Even skirtings, doors, windows, window frames, everything. So it works in the same way. So we're going to use the Armstead Quick Dry Satin. I've already given it a stir and decanted it into my paint kettle. That stops me getting any contamination from anything that there may be some dust lying around. And that means I'm not going to contaminate the main can. We're also going to make sure we use a good quality synthetic brush, which I'm going to dampen before use. So what that does is it keeps the brush more pliable for a longer period of time, rather than it actually drying up near the stock of the brush up this end. So I've already done it with the one I'm going to use, and I've already primed it ready to go. So what we need to do is look at how we're going to paint the door to begin with. We're going to actually do the inner part of the panels first, and then look at finishing the rails and stiles afterwards. Now, the idea with applying paint liberally on a surface like this helps you to maintain the wet edge. But if you're in a warm environment, it can actually be even easier if we just get a damp cloth. So I've actually got this on slightly damp. This can be rubbed over the surface purely just to help with the wet edge time. So it also increases the flow of the product when it starts to dry. So when you're applying the paint to the surface, make sure you load the brush by dipping it in and tapping it on the side of the kettle first. That loads the paint into the bristles. Then we can actually push the paint around on the surface, doing the outer part of the panel to begin with. Reload. And basically we're carrying on across the whole surface, making sure we get a liberal but even coat across. Now this part is classed as laying on, because all we're doing is getting the paint even across the surface. But when you lay off, always lay off in the longest length of any rectangle, just with the finer tips of the bristles. So what we don't want to do is put too much pressure on the brush, because that will create lots of brush marks. So all we're looking at doing is just with the finer tips of the bristles to reduce those brush marks, and then leave it alone. So a common thing that we use to actually communicate this quite easily, we hope, is 3 L's. Lay it on, which is this first bit. Lay it off, which is the one with the small tips of the bristles. And then the last L is leave it alone. Because if you go back after it's starting to dry, even after a couple of minutes, it can heighten the brush marks on the surface and actually give you an unsightly sort of ribbed look and rib finish that it won't be particularly pretty to look at. So all I'm doing is exactly the same thing. Now I'm doing the rails and stiles, which is basically around the framework of the outside of the door, but not going back into my panels because they're already finished. So we're just making sure we get full coverage across the top, and then just finish off the bottom. We always finish off the base last, just in case there is any contamination on the floor. You don't want to start pushing it around the rest of the surface. So that's a few tips that hopefully will help. So dampen the surface. Make sure you dampen your brush before you use it. Apply it liberally, lay it on, lay it off, and then leave it alone. And if it needs a second coat, we can wait a couple of hours and then we repeat exactly the same process.